Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co-host, David.
Hey everyone.
And this week we're going to discuss with what makes a character a must pull for us here at the Brohoyo podcast. So, Dave, why don't you give us just a real quick description of what definition we would use for a must pull character, or at least your
Yes.
definition of a must pull character.
So defining a must pull character, there's a couple different aspects we can look at the must pull, right? So the first one would be on the initial trailer launch or the initial drip marketing that comes out, specifically with like Hoyoverse games, but even outside of Hoyoverse games. When you first see a character and there's this instant connection, whether it be because of the play style you saw in the trailer, the aesthetic that you see, something, especially with Hoyoverse games, the personality of the character, you just like immediately are saying, "Yep, I'm saving, I'm budgeting for this character, or I'm gonna pull out the credit card and I'm swiping and I'm pulling for this character, or whatever it is." That would be kind of maybe the first step of where a must pull character would be for those of us that are maybe more meta oriented, right? It's after doing some theory crafting and doing some number crunching, and you see the number multipliers and how the kit works, and maybe how it synergizes with some other characters. That would be the other aspect. The other way to look at being a must pull would be, this is going to be a top tier meta defining character. Therefore, I'm pulling for it because it'll best let me grow my account, or do big numbers, or support so it can have big numbers, right? So that to me is going to be what a must pull is, and then kind of the two different ways to look at it, and then the factors that go into those, which is ultimately what I think we're going to be discussing. Anything to add to that definition, or do you maybe have a different approach to it?
Um, I think that's a good breakdown of it, splitting into sort of two categories. You have the emotional, the style, the artistic must pull, on those metrics, and then you have the more data driven, gameplay driven, meta driven side of it. So yeah, I think that's a good breakdown of the two potential reasons why you might consider a character must. So yep. I wouldn't argue with that.
Okay. And so then, to kind of throw it to you here, Steve, let's start with the aesthetic side, right? Let's start with how a character maybe looks. Um and you can maybe even pull from some examples if you've had characters that you've had be must pulls based off of off of their looks and what you saw in the trailer in that regards. But what typically appeals to you? I know you've mentioned in previous episodes we've talked about stands, we've talked about characters that give Klee energy and are kind of like your daughter Fu, right?
Mhm.
But what aesthetically maybe draws a character up to that must pull status for you?
I would say really I have two easy to hit points, which is again the Klee, bubbly, kind of cute character. I'm very easily manipulated by those sort of characters, the Nahidas, the Klees, that sort. Um, the cute daughter Fu character works for me. I enjoy them, and I spent way too many primos on pulling Klee after she was complete garbage. Like, she had been garbage for a year, and I still spent those because I just needed to have her on my team. I actually have her summer outfit as well, a little witch outfit for her, which was fun. But anyways, so yeah, there's that sort of angle, which you have me pegged there. That's definitely something I'm vulnerable to. And again, stand characters. I'm a big JoJo fan. I like summoned supports. I think that's also sort of one of the vectors that Hoyo and other games can easily get me on. If you give me a summoner or a character that can bring an extra character with them, like let me get two characters at the price of one, then I'm pretty on board with that as well. I tend to like that aesthetic. But I know that to kind of put you in the crosshairs here, Dave, I know ice and blue are two sort of go-to
Yeah.
aesthetics for you. But would there be anything else that you would add to that list that you're comfortable with sharing with the group?
So to clarify, yeah, you definitely got me pegged. The blue aesthetic, or even some shades of like purple, because it's very similar to blue, right? that already kind of wins me over. And anything and Hydra. That's why also the water affinity, right? Because water is typically blue and depicted as such. And so ice a little bit. It is a lighter blue, but to clarify, it's mostly the water or hydro characters. But yeah, a blue thick, or like even like a royal purple type. For me, it's part of why I was so drawn to Raiden Shogun and Yamiko when they came out. And then staying in the Genshin universe, characters like Yelan, and then even into your credit about Cryo and Ice, Eula was another character that kind of has that bluish aesthetic to her that really stands out. Now, as far as like other things that aesthetically make things a must pull for me, as far as like the looks go, I like appearances that I kind of like for like male characters. Like if there's a male character, like part of like for me on the must pull Zhongli, there was the ultimately like the meta aspect and the game style kind of like making the game on easy mode. There was that, but even before I knew that, I thought that was one of the most dapper looking characters in Genshin, and just that cool, the cool gentlemanly appeal.
You like a well-dressed
Is
man.
I do. I like a well-dressed man, and along those same lines, I also like a well-dressed woman as well. And so, like a character like Eula, I'll use her as an example for kind of like that dapper, well-dressed. She has a tie, like she wears a tie. And the other thing with Eula that I really liked was her attack animation. I know there's like a little people talk about like a little stutter in between like I think the second and third, or there was like a frame stutter somewhere between the second and third auto. But overall, like the elegance of swinging the sword and just the almost dance like appearance of it with a giant greatsword, right? She's a greatsword user. That just to me, she was a must pull based off of the bluish appearance, and then just how kind of elegant and sophisticated she was, and her attack animations looked. And you learn about her backstory and her personality. And I know some people didn't like that her family owned slaves and like were not thrilled with her, even though she was a standout from her family. She didn't get along with her family, is trying to redeem the family name
It's
because of
it's
the history, right?
yeah. I also feel it's worth
But
noting that happened like 100 years before
yes,
this. Like this isn't her.
yeah.
Like not
So
even her grandparents. This is many years ago.
so I say that, well, because some people were, I clarify that because some people were holding that against her despite her outspokenness against that previous lineage having done that. But again, that was getting into like more of her backstory, and then we actually looked at her kit and what her kit did. And those weren't why she was a must pull for me. Like the must pull again was purely from an aesthetic for her. And then I did enjoy her playstyle once she was pulled, and I built a team around her, and I really I played her as my main in my her party was my main party through the basically a lot of Inazuma's patch, and when we did Enkanomiya.
You pronounce it about as correct as we're probably going to.
That's as close as I'm going to get to. All right, close enough for Jazz, but so those are for me kind of what I look for aesthetically. Again, is the bluish hues, the purplish themes, and then elegance or from the female characters, or a sophistication from the male characters, or even I don't even have to limit that to each. Just elegance and sophistication from male and female characters. So that would be kind of the aesthetic. Now you talked a little bit to move to kind of the personality of a character. Does that sway you one way or another? You talked about cute and bubbly daughter foos, but is there any other personality quirk that makes a character a must pull for you? Or to even expand this further, is there a personality trope that you absolutely hate, and no matter if you like everything else against the character, or if you like everything else for the character, you're still nope, that personality can't handle it?
Yeah. I think I have a lot more nopes than I do like. As I mentioned, I like bubbly, kind of mostly happy characters. I like that sort of upbeat tone, at least in the younger characters that show up. That's a preference of mine. I think it's the and I've mentioned this before, but the saucy, the gritty, edgy loner character that comes a little bit stock as like enemy rival, player rival, what have you, just doesn't work for me. I can't take it seriously. Um, it's too shonen anime. I think would be the way I would put it. Just doesn't work for me. It's part of
Okay.
the reason why I think Blade I bounced off of. Like I actually really like Blade's design, but his just uh, tone and demeanor just don't work for me. He's stoic, but he was also the. I think now he works better than he did on release because he was sort of the only sort of dour, edgy, always talking about death type character.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, in Star Rail versus what we had at the time. Like now, I think he's not as bad. Doesn't strike me quite as much of a problem character, but even now, I'm just kind of like not really interested in that. Which is not to say that I don't like characters that can be darker. Kafka is I would say a darker personality type that works for me. Again, she tends to be on the lighter side, a little bit more sarcastic, doesn't take herself as seriously. I think that would be my general preference. The other one would be Paimon. If you give me anything Paimon-like, I'm going to be... And that might be more of a voice acting issue, but if you give me that sort of personality type, I'm going to be frustrated. Rappa didn't actually bother all that much as far as personality goes, even though she is constantly talking about ninja. That doesn't really.
Okay.
But that's me. What about you? What sort of preferences do you have when it comes to character personality?
So I was looking at this, in preparation for this episode and the recording, and I was looking at the characters that I like, and the easy side of it on like for a male character side is again just kind of going to a sophisticated gentleman type. Like those are typically the male characters that I am more attracted to in terms of wanting to get them is if they're sophisticated gentlemen. So again, somebody like a Zhongli.
Mm-hmm.
For female characters, I was looking at the characters. I was going back through my Star Rail polls and my Genshin polls and like characters when they first came out. And so, and the reason I say look at characters when they first came out is because we didn't really know how they would we had a general idea maybe, but we didn't actually know how they're going to synergize.
Yeah.
What their multipliers are going to be like, how they're actually going to perform in combat until they've been out for a cycle, So really going back and looking at characters the first time they came out, I started to realize like, oh man, I have a type. Like I didn't realize it until I went back and was reviewing this, because it's like looking at the characters I really liked. It was like Yai Miko. I did like Eula as well, but Yai Miko, going over to Star Rail, Kafka, Black Swan, I think Ruin May I was interested in pulling for her first run through, but she came, I think, right after a bunch of banners that I had pulled for, so I didn't have the economy to pull for her as a free-to-play. But if I had to sum up my characters that I apparently am attracted to and interested in pulling for, it's kind of like the Damiwami characters, for lack of any better terminology and phrasing.
Yeah.
Like that is apparently that's my type, because it's, I guess, looking at more mature characters like that, because Yai Miko, I loved her personality, just like you mentioned it, the sarcasm she has, and Kafka has this same appeal too, in terms of just the playful banter, the I know more than the Traveler, or I know more than Trailblazer type stuff, and I'm just gonna toy with you and play with you type thing, and drag you along as like my little puppet type stuff. Yeah, so that's there's no other way to put it. I have a type, and that's the type, I guess.
There's no shame in that.
And I was even trying to think like outside of Hoyoverse games, like looking at other games that we play, and so looking at say Nike, Goddess of Victory, right? So another game that I play, looking at characters that are aesthetically pleasing and whose personality and like things that I like in the story. So like looking at my lobby screen, let's say the characters I have in my lobby. So Lud, who is kind of a mom figure in her squad that she's in. Specifically, I'm talking about her hot springs outfit, which is like her in a kimono type thing, as opposed to her default, where she's more like got the Russian fuzzy hat on and is like kind of the white outfit anyway. If you play the game, you understand what I'm talking about. So her, and then I guess the other character that I really like is Rosanna, who's kind of like the mafia, like the equivalent of like a mafia boss type thing. So again, very mommy energy, domineering type in terms of just very to the point. I walk into a room and people look at me, and when I say something, people jump to action stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my type.
Again, no shame in that.
Other people help me out. Maybe you guys, I'm not alone. Surely I'm not alone.
I know at least Braxophone is with you on that one. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, Braxophone with me. We both, I know that when Jing Lu came out, she has maybe the mommy vibes, but is ultimately is more of a quiet character and then like a silent threat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's me and Braxophone, we get along in that regards.
Again, no shame, no shade there. But I think we've done a decent job of talking about from an aesthetic side what we might consider a must pull. But why don't we shift over into the more meta gameplay focused side? So I guess I'll jump right in since you've had to talk for a little bit. I might as well put my work in.
That's a polite way of saying I've been dominating the conversation. I appreciate your politeness. Go ahead, sir.
No, you know what? I don't mean that. Anyways, so yeah, I think for me, meta tends to play a larger part. There have been characters that I've been really excited for. Dea was a character that I was really, really hoping for, and unfortunately, at the time of her release, she just didn't really click. Apparently, she has improved over time. I'm sure she has some okay teams, but
let's limit our Deha slander a little bit. Yeah,
but she just hasn't really come into her own, I feel. So I ended up skipping her. There have been a couple other characters that in Genshin, bow characters are characters I tend to skip. I'm not a big fan of them. Yelan is sort of a hard exception in a lot of ways, just because she doesn't ever really have to use her bow. You bring her onto the field, she runs through people, generates a lot of energy, and then ults and gets out. So I don't have to do charge shots with her or even auto attack. Yeah, stuff like that. I tend to be more gameplay focused. That's part of the reason why I pulled for Zelonin a couple weeks ago, was because she was just such a meta character. It's the reason why I pull for the Archons. Archons, they don't make bad Archons. So even with Farina, who was a character that I really wasn't jiving with from a personality side, at least as she was presented original. Obviously, she gets a character shift later in the story, but as of the time of her banner, her character was not one that I really gelled with, but I still kind of went, you know what, I'm going to still pull for her because I got to chase that meta just a bit of to help the medicine go down. But what about you? Are there any meta characters that you pulled just because of meta, or?
It's funny you mention the bow characters. I've literally the past week or 2 weeks gone back to playing my Ganyu team, which is Mona, Shenhe, Zhongli, and then Ganyu. So it's funny that you mentioned that. But as far as meta pulls, character wise, yeah, I follow a similar philosophy for you in that regard. Yeah, if we see something that's going to be meta defining, or something that in the current meta is like going to be tops of the charts, or make the one who is the tops of the chart even stronger in the case of like support type units, then yeah, those are definitely going to be things that become must pulls. And for something like that, so I'll use Jalonen as an example, and for those of you, you can check out my misfortune on my Jalonen polls. We have that up on the channel. You can check that out. But for somebody like Jalonen, she wasn't a must pull for me just from the aesthetic. It was a culmination then becoming a must pull once we learned exactly what her kit was and the introduction to, oh, she heals, and oh, also a geo character that interacts with other elements in a way that's conducive to the other elemental interactions. Okay, great. And that is what made her become that must pull, that defense shred and everything like that. So, and I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm having a Michael Scott moment where I was talking and I knew I had a point, except for I forgot my point. But,
well, meta only pulls was the prompt. I don't know if you had wandered off of that.
I was using Jalonen as an example of somebody that I wasn't originally. Yeah, so thank you. So we bought enough time. So because like you said, Jalonen wasn't originally a must pull for me until I saw what the kit was, and then once, again, I saw what the kit was and how it interacted. Everything. That's where I was. Thank you. That's when she became the must pull, and unfortunately, she didn't come home. But along those same lines, to continue with your philosophy, Malvika's coming up. Malvika's going to be a must pull because Archon. And like the philosophy is they don't make weak Archons. Now, she also has a little bit of that mommy energy, but I can hide behind she's also an Archon, and that's why I'm pulling for her, not the other thing.
I mean, it's a decent fig leaf to use in that case.
I'll just hide behind she's an Archon so that I don't continue my trend of just, oh yeah, I pull for the mommies. But yeah, so as far as meta goes, now have there been, you mentioned Farina being a character that, again, you didn't gel with personality wise, didn't really love the aesthetic, but even despite that, you pulled for because meta. And so trying to think for me as far as a character that was meta that I pulled for because meta, but I didn't really like per se. I'm probably gonna ruffle some feathers with this one, but I don't really love Nahida.
How can you say something so brave and yet so controversial?
I don't really. I guess she's important to the story and the role she plays in the story, everything like that. Fine. But as far as like the play style, I guess it's just kind of her character. As much as you like your daughter Foos, I am neutral about them. They don't really sway the needle one way or the other. And so that's just kind of Nahida for me. She's just kind of a character. Nothing like to me stood out to her, but because meta and how strong of a Dendro applier and support she was to the team with elemental mastery and everything like that, I pulled for her and then had her plugged her into a team. So I will probably get pushback. So
you're gonna get pushback from me. Like she's just
that's perfectly fine. That's, you know what, you push back away, but y'all can at me in the comments. That's fine. I will gladly and happily respond and carry on this dialogue. If you want to flame me for it.
You're insane. She does Furina's story, but better. Anyway, I can't believe you. So disappointed. I'm in a tizzy. I actually can't continue right now. Give me a second.
So, yeah, I mean, so that would be a character that I pulled for because meta and literally no other reason. She was a strong Dendros applier, and at the time, one of the very few options we had.
I mean, she still kind of is one of the very few options.
I mean, we have a couple other options now, but yeah, she's still one of the best, if not the best, Dendro applier. I don't have the numbers in front of me to corroborate that. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm 100% she's still the best. It's just there's edge cases on certain ones that.
Speaking in an overall general performance, sure, maybe in a niche situation, somebody else could potentially be better. Is the other, I guess, qualifier there. But yeah. So as far as the meta goes, now I kind of want to throw back to you if you're out of your tizzy. As far as characters, because I know I kind of branched out and talked out outside of Hoyoverse games. But I want to kind of hear from you outside of Hoyoverse games. Has there been another game that you can use as an example where a character, the aesthetic of the character is like, yep, I want that, or a character that you pulled specifically because meta, even if you didn't like their appearance?
Yeah, I got a couple that I can kind of pull out of my back pocket here. So the first one would be Brown Dust, the original, which I guess is Brave 9 for
Yes.
now. Um, so she's actually only a 4-star, I believe, but Hell was a character, and the character's name is literally Hell, Hell.
Mm.
She was a character that was just a must get for me. Again, she's super meta in the novice arena. She also has a play style that I absolutely loved, which was she was a reflection character. So what she wanted to do is you wanted her to be able to cast her spell because it put a taunt on her as well as a reflective shield, so that people would hit her and then she'd reflect back damage onto them for massive damage. It was one of the most fun that I've had in a lot of gotchas. Just having a character that's yeah, okay, punch me in the face, and then you blow yourself up. Cool. It was great for PvP. There were, obviously counter builds and so forth, but ooh, she was a favorite of mine, and still is. Even though she wasn't big headliner, she was definitely a must pull for me. I would also say, yeah, let's go to Nikke. Red Hood would be
Hmm.
the other one that she was the last anniversary character. She was
Yeah, she
one,
was the first anniversary character.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
first, correct. We're on the second, so the last one would be the first. But she was a character that just really gelled with me. I really liked her. I know that she had, again, I wasn't super into Nikke at that point in time, so really it was just the aesthetic of her, the big rifle, the her play style just was one that I really enjoyed. She was actually the first character that I 3-starred, did whatever that process is in Nikke. Got multiple copies of, got 4 copies of her, and managed to pull that. So that was a big one for me as well for Nikke. I've got a couple others that I've added to the list on Nikke, but I tend to pop in and out of that game depending on what the banners are. Yeah, those are sort of top of head, top of mind ones from games that we typically talk about. While I try and come up with other names, Dave, were there other characters, other games that you wanted to discuss that maybe had must pull characters in?
So, yeah, I wanted to touch on, while I don't play it anymore, Epic 7. Um, that game definitely had a large cast of very colorful characters of varying aesthetics, various play styles, and for that one, I mean, there were characters in that game that, yeah, you would literally pull and play just because they were like the PvP meta. And in that game, they have, your typical elemental tree in terms of water beats fire, fire beats grass, et cetera, et cetera. But then they also had what they called moonlight units. So like dark and then light, and they were advantageous and weak to each other. But in that game, for PvP early on, I think there were 2 moonlight characters that were every arena team. And it was Arbiter Vildred. Man, we're going back
Yeah.
years here. Arbiter Vildred was one of them, and the other one was, his name was Ken. And I'm specifically talking about his Moonlight version. I forget what it is, because his normal version is a fire version, but his Moonlight version is a moon one as opposed to a light one. And those 2 were super meta in PvP. And while Ken was kind of a counter attacker type, I didn't really love his aesthetic. Vildred was kind of the edgy guy and had an interesting, fun mechanic in that basically I remember you built him to be a glass cannon. He has like no HP, no defense. He's just a lot of attack, crit rate, crit damage, etc., etc. But his mechanic was when he's killed, he respawns and then like immediately gets a turn and goes. And that has like a 4 or 5 turn cooldown. So the idea is he dies, immediately spawns, gets his turn, does his ultimate attack, and then if he kills people, he does like follow-up attacks. And so that was the gambit, right? And then you hopefully then keep him alive until the cooldown's off if you haven't won the fight by then. So those would be characters that I didn't necessarily love the aesthetic for, but you played or you tried to pull for, etc. Because if you wanted to get anywhere decent in PvP, which is already hard enough in a game where people wail, because as we've talked about, I think way back in our first season, we had an episode, people are spending tens of thousands of dollars to be competitive in PvP for that game. And I think even some broke 6 figures in terms of real money spent to be competitive in PvP in Epic 7. And then as far as characters in that game that were not meta, man, I pulled a lot of characters that weren't meta because their aesthetic looked really cool. There's too many to list. Plus, my memory isn't as good off the top of my head. I should pull up probably and look it up. But there were a number of characters. When I quit that game, I probably, if I was more savvy at selling accounts on the black market, I could have gotten a hefty amount of money for the large roster I had and the built characters and gear I had. But yeah, number of characters that had no place in the meta that I definitely pulled for because I just loved their aesthetic. But that's going to be kind of what I got here. Unless, did you have anything else to add to that? Any other angles in terms of what makes a character a must pull that factors in for you?
As far as what factors into me, no. What I would say is that I know a lot of times, and I guess this is going to be more of a broader commentary on the gacha community. A lot of times a character will be brought up as, this character is a must pull. This character, each new character that comes out, there's people trying to sell you on it or convince you that it's not worth pulling and so on and so forth. But I think one of the key points, and we've brought this up before, especially if you're a free to play, is it's always okay to wait. I know that, for example, Dave, you waited on Yelan. First run through, she just came at a bad time, and then second time around, you picked her up. I've waited on Kafka. I wasn't able to get Kafka the first time around because I was just in a rough spot. Starjade wise, so you wait for them to come around. So even if something is a must pull for you, it is okay to kind of go, you know what, if you don't get it now, they will cycle back around. So that's sort of just one quick thought here. I know that the community, every gacha community, likes to hype up, this character is the best thing ever, and it might be for a subset of that group. It might be that the character is actually very powerful, but as long as you're not in a PvP only gacha game, which if you're playing a PvP only gacha game, get out now. It's not worth it. You're going to end up spending more money than it's just not worth it. Just run away. But in most cases, it's okay to wait for the next cycle, the next go around of the character. But yeah, that's sort of my final thoughts.
All right. Well, that's good. Then we'll leave it there because I know we have some events. We have an event to talk about in Star Rail, and then we actually have a lot of news outside of Hoyoverse to get to with some game launches and ends of services. But let's jump into the events next. So looking at those events, we have one in Honkai Star Rail going on, and Steve, I will throw it to you. What's happening?
Yeah, so last week I was incorrect. Simulated Universe is not the only event that will be going on in Honkai Star Rail. There is a new event called Sound Hunt, which is the rhythm game, or it is a rhythm game. Event, you go around collecting sound rhythm mini games in order to make a band play real well in Pinacone. I don't want to give too much away. It is a very story-heavy event, similar to March's sword training type event, where you're expected to kind of progress a story. I will say that as someone who did very poorly in high school marching band and has no sense of rhythm, absolutely zero sense of rhythm, it is completable. It's not amazing. The easy level basically has a bar that you can follow visually, which helps. But the second one, you have to go entirely off of rhythm. And as someone who, when playing trombone in marching band, had their first chair literally standing next to them, clapping in their ear, still managed to get off beat. Um, it was a struggle. I'm not gonna lie, it was a struggle, but completable. Otherwise, it's more fun time with Rappa. It's pretty decent story. Events are real good. I am a little confused about why the light cone that is coming with the event is a destruction light cone that seems to be designed for, I think, Blade, based off of what I read in it. Like, it seems to be a Blade light cone. Kind of confused as to why that's the case, but okay, I guess. Not what I was expecting. But yeah, overall,
Because even in Bybra Dong Hung he's not destruction. He's hunt, isn't he?
no, he is destruction. The problem
Oh,
is that
there you
it's a
go.
health scaling one, and Imbiber
Oh,
isn't health scaling.
no,
So
and not really. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I was just confused. That's all.
I was trying to give him an out, but
Yeah.
no, yeah. If that's health scaling, yeah, not so much.
Yep. So I mean, I guess he needs all the help he can get, but still wasn't. Seemed like an odd decision. Regardless, that's the event. Just kind of keeping it short and sweet. How about I throw it back to you for other events?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to give that event a try because as somebody who is a drummer and a percussionist, I'll be interested to see because Hoyoverse does not have a solid track record to me in terms of getting rhythm games down pat. Sometimes being rhythmically inclined is. We'll see if they've improved upon it. I guess I'll leave it at that. But looking at other gotcha news, we actually have a lot going on. A lot of end of service announcements actually, and then we have some launches as well coming up. But I'll go ahead and start with the end of services. So we'll shout out some O7s. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius just shut down October 30th. So that game is no longer around to be played. We also have an end of service for Konosuba Fantastic Days that will be shutting down on January 30th. So we do, or excuse me, yeah, January 30th of next year, 2025. So we do still have some time on that one. But just note Konosuba Fantastic Days shutting down. Other shutdowns are going to include King of Fighters All Stars. That game will be shutting down as well, or maybe it just shut down. Which that one, I think that one didn't last very long. If it's the one I'm thinking it was, I didn't play that, but I think that was the Street Fighter one. Had a lot of different, had the red flags of like a lot of different server type things and not a lot of activity on the given servers. So I think that came out this year and is now done. The other one, which was kind of interesting, was Girls Frontline. The original Girls Frontline is shutting down, but only the Chinese server. They actually had an announcement because of some confusion and misinformation going around that it was all servers, and that is not the case. It is just the Chinese server due to some issues. I'm not even entirely sure of them myself, but if you are playing Girls Frontline on the Chinese server, that will be shutting down. But if you're on global NA or EU or something like that, your service will be unaffected. So those are going to be kind of the end of services. I mentioned it last week, but as far as game launches, Starseed Asnia Trigger just launched, which is basically Eversoul. It's a typical idle gotcha game. So a lot of duplicates required to like maximize the growth potential of a character. Just a different graphics engine, I guess, than Eversoul. So if you like Eversoul, you can give Starseed Asnia Trigger tries. That just launched. We also have an official launch date for Haze Reverb. We mentioned in the past that the launch was coming, but now we have an official date being November 6th. So that'll be just here in a couple days from when this episode goes up. November 6th, Haze Reverb, which that is going to be Mech Girls, but with the Brave 9 or the Brown Dust Brave 9 gameplay style. So if you're familiar with those or enjoy that, you can give that a go and try that out. Another one that is in early access on Steam is King Arthur Legends Rise. That one just came onto my radar today as there's a Steam client for it as well. I believe Netmarble is behind this one, so if you have some reservations about Netmarble, you can keep an eye on that one. I'll be looking at it just to see more about what it's about, because graphically, like, being a Steam client incentivizes me to more easily try out a game, right? And I posted this up on our Discord, but another game that launched recently that somehow slipped past my radar is a Pokemon trading card game, Pocket, which is really scratching a nostalgia itch for me in terms of Pokemon card collecting, but then also the Pokemon trading card game itself in kind of a quickened and shortened version, in that it's not the full game that we're traditionally used to, maybe you played growing up or whatever have you, but it's a more expedited gameplay style, similar to I think Yu-Gi-Oh did this a while back with one of their games too. But that's going to be it for the new game launches. The other big thing is Nikkei. I know we mentioned it multiple times tonight, but Nikkei has started their 2.0 anniversary. We have a video. There's a lot of content that they have launched. I'm not going to go over all of it here, as we posted another video up about my quick review of that, as well as come join me for my Cinderella polls and see how those went, or if my Mr. Off-Banner trend continues. But we do want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Let us know what your criteria for must-pull characters are in Genshin and Star Rail, or maybe any other gotchas that you play. Maybe you're like me and you have a type that you apparently go for, or maybe you have a different type that you go for. But let us know what it is. If you enjoyed the episode and you'd like to show your support for the show, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. You can always email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with questions or suggestions for the show. We also have a link to the Discord in the description, so be sure to join us over there for news, game nights, and content notifications. Be sure to join us next week when we discuss about our interactions with the different gacha communities. But until then, keep gaming. We made a choice, go fight against your fate.